Welcome to the Story Behind the Story podcast, a behind the scenes exploration of the human experience in all aspects of life, love, and leadership. Today, we're going to dive into the concept of trust, finding your inner trust and learning to trust your intuition. I'm your host, Angie Bailey.
Hi, I'm the co-host, Lynette Sproles.
Hi, I'm also co-host Dominic.
Well, first of all, thank you, Lynette and Dominic, for walking this path with me. I am absolutely thrilled that we're getting our first podcast off the grounds. As we were thinking about our first show, and while we had so many different ideas that we were all thinking about and kicking around, we really landed on trust. And Dominic, it was you who said, how about if this first one is about trust? And so can you tell the audience a little bit more about why you wanted to explore this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. I spend a lot of time just talking about ideas and concepts, and I also have clients. And one of the things that comes up a lot is trust. A client will say, I can't trust this person, or I want to trust this person. Our trust has been breached. And I always try to find like the most efficient path through that. And, it started me thinking, well, what happens if you can't trust the other person, or that it's hard to do that? And I said, well, what other variables can you shift? And like the variables you can always work with are yourself. You can change your thoughts, you can change your behavior, you can change your actions. And I thought it might be interesting for us to talk about that. Well, it says, well, if you can't trust other people or you have difficulty with it, then let's explore, expanding trust in self and see what that produces.
So that's fascinating to me because I can remember having these conversations when I was at work, and, this idea of trusting leadership or trusting your colleagues, it always came up, and I would always think to myself, but I think the root cause of some of this inability to trust others is exactly your point, is that we just don't seem to actually trust ourselves first, right? Like we don't trust whether or not that the relationship is the right relationship, or whether or not we're making the right decisions. And, so I think often it just boils down mainly to your point, is that until we learn to trust ourselves, I think it's going to be incredibly hard to learn to trust others. And so I'm going to slide a little bit into like my conversations with Lynette. Lynette, you and I spend so many hours hiking in the woods with our two pups, Oakley and Louie, and our conversations range all over the place. It's like so much fun, all the things that we talk about and how we do these deep dives in these things. And heck, we even started a novel. I remember one time, as we were going through the woods, we had this idea of how we wanted to like share some of our beliefs, but do it through a novel and stuff. But the one thing that just keeps coming back over and over again, especially this past year, for both of us, is this concept and this idea about really just trusting ourselves or trusting our gut and letting that fire in our bellies direct us rather than our hearts and even our minds. So can you explain this for the audience a little bit further? Because you understand this so much deeper than I do.
Yeah, so learning to filter our information through the gut instinct, which is going to be in our sacral and solar plexus within the abdominal region. When we get our information there and we let it travel up through our body, then it goes up through the heart. So it's filtered through love, then goes up into the brain. And we function from such a different place, where when we function just from the mind, we're just functioning from our ego. So we're only functioning from a way to get results from outside of us. That's what the mind is wanting. The ego is wanting, like, how can I do this from something external? Or when we bring it into that gut wisdom, we then are learning, okay, from the inside, what do I really need? And it's more of a soulful connection with ourselves. And you're right. Like, it does seem like no matter what we talk about, you and I both are always circling back to this place of having listened to our gut and what a difference that makes at the times we do and the times we don't.
Right. It's fascinating. Just last night I was at book club and we were reading the book by David Brooks on the road to character. And one of the things that we were really talking about is like this concept of, and you mentioned it around like external, right? That we're always seeking something externally to like drive us in some ways, whether it's likes on social media or, a review or feedback, etc. And so often though, like, or at least the question that I posed last night to the team, to the group at book club was, but when do we start giving this away? Like, when do we give away our innate ability to really trust our gut, right? To really hone in and think about what it is, to be able to feel when it feels yes and feel when it feels no. Like, when did we give that away? And I remember one of the ladies last night, she's like, were you looking for a specific date? I said, no, I'm not looking for like March 17th, 1979. It's really a rhetorical question, right?
Yep.
And so, that's what I was just really kind of honing in or getting at. And so, like Dominic, you're an inspiring coach and you've worked with so many individuals and couples. And often you found that, as you mentioned earlier, that the root of their issues comes down to trust. So is it that they don't trust each other or that they simply don't trust themselves? And really, I think along these lines, like, what does it mean to even raise your consciousness about this whole concept around trust? And is there an intersection between trusting your gut and consciousness?
Yeah, I think to answer the first one, I would say it's both. I mean, sometimes there's a breach of trust between people. There's an agreement,
Right.
either implicit or explicit, and that agreement's broken. And depending on the meaning attached to that broken agreement, there can be like a certain amount of pain that's associated with it. So with all my clients, it's just a main go-to. It's like starting with the self. It's almost like we have, even if it's couples, it's like two autonomous journeys going deep within self that will at some point create fruit that will allow a better connection or better rapport, even better communication. So when it comes to the trust, I mean, I've definitely begun to explore and gone deeper with getting my clients to trust themselves. And if I can add to and expand on it, because frequently if you just say one word, we're not really adding to it. So what is trust? Well, trust is trust. And so I'd say, well, maybe if one trusts oneself, it comes down to like self-reliance. Maybe it's making commitments to yourself and keeping them. So you know that you're a reliable person. Sometimes it comes down to getting more experience. Like maybe you don't have enough knowledge in a particular area. And so you don't have a lot of trust for yourself because there's a lot of doubt and uncertainty and just kind of like a blank space. And so as you can fill yourself up with these experiences, you can fill yourself up with, making commitments to yourself and keeping those. And then having that as a reference point in your mind. So it says, oh, when I'm in this situation,
Mm-hmm.
I know I can get through this because like I've done it before. Not too long ago, I went on a trip out to California. I was at Mount Shasta, and as is my usual, I didn't really prepare for it the way maybe a lot of people would, but that's kind of the way I like enjoying it. I mean, I because I have trust in myself. I say, well, I'm in like decent shape. I can hike for days. I don't collapse or like get exhausted and stuff. And of course, maybe not all of these things would apply at any given moment in time, but it's like faith, trust, prior experience, because I've done stuff like this multiple times. And, not too long, like I get out there on the mountain and I'm like really on the mountain. So I'm not an experienced mountain climber, but when you go out to Mount Shasta, you can really go as far as you want, even up to the top. So I would surprise myself, and at some point I said, "Wow, I'm really glad I'm able to trust myself to have these experiences, because if I really worried about this, then I don't think I'd be here." So
Mm-hmm.
if we bring that back to the couples, I encourage them, our individuals, to think back about times where what they have uncertainty or doubt about, like where it's actually they did do it. They did have some success, or they did get through something, or like they relied on themselves. And so the main thing I'm trying to work with my clients is because they think someone else will do something and they'll be hurt. And what I really try to get them to a point is it's not really going to be a matter of what happens. It's going to be a matter of like the meaning that you attach to it, and then what you want to happen next. And if you find that you're able to get to a point where you can be decisive, where you can, feel an experience like a trigger, you can experience pain, but still hold it together as opposed to collapse, then
Mm-hmm.
that will start to build the trust. And I would say, just in conclusion, relating it to consciousness, because yes, Angie, it's rare you have a conversation with me, but I don't talk about we need to increase consciousness. Um, I think,
I'm like, I think I'm awake. I'm conscious.
right. I'm here. I think the way I would say trust relates to consciousness. There is this actual map of consciousness you can look at. You can Google it. Anyone can, and like click on images, and it'll pop up, and it'll show kind of like levels, say in a department store. Say if you grew up with something like that, and sure enough, as you start to go up, things like trust will appear. And so at the lower levels, it's say more like a victim. There's a lot of like self-doubt. There's fear. But as you
Mm-hmm.
increase the consciousness and I guess like how does one really do that? You start really focusing on what else could be true that is actually more ordered, more structured. Are in terms of feeling in the body, what else could be true that actually makes me feel better about this? And so when it comes to like people, you're saying, well, gee, every time you're out on my site, I know you're doing something wrong. A
Mm-hmm.
higher level of truth could be, it's like, well, that can't be true, like every time out of the site. So maybe it's only half the time. So if it's half the time, well, then that's better than all the time. So I'm getting closer to truth, and at the same time increasing consciousness.
Yeah, I like that. And, as you were talking, it just kind of reminded me, and again, Lynette and I had this conversation, and actually with another really good friend of ours, Linda, had a conversation with her as well. And it says, like whenever we think about it, what you said is like, we sometimes enter from a place of fear. And I was like, and I won't say that I've always done this, but I at least try to live my life along this principle. And that is, I'm going to let the journey or the path unfold the way it's going to unfold. But I'm going to trust that that my journey along this path it's going to unfold the way it will. And I'm going to be okay, no matter what happens, no matter how the outcome is, and whatever decisions that I make today, that those decisions were made with the best and the most information that I had at this point in time, because you don't always have all the information. That's whether it's personal or business, right? You don't always have all the information, but I'm going to make the best decision that I can. And if it then turns out that that decision doesn't go the way I envisioned, or it doesn't go down the path that I thought it would, well, then I make a different decision, right? But that I trust that I can make a different decision. And if you notice, like, I didn't say, and if I make a mistake, or if I regret what I did, because I don't know that, yes, of course we make mistakes, right? But I think when we enter this phase where we think that every decision we're making could be a mistake, well, then it's like we're not really trusting that the decision that we're making is the one that's in our best interest at this point in time. It doesn't mean it's a forevermore right decision. It just means that today it's a right decision. And so I really find that that's been helpful. And so it just reminded me of that as you were talking, Dominic, like where I never think about the levels of consciousness, right? Like what level I'm at in consciousness, but I want to at least believe that I've evolved to some point to where I can have enough trust in my ability to handle whatever comes my way, and have enough knowledge and insight and wisdom at that point in time to make a new decision if that's what I need to do. And so I thank you for sharing that, because it just helps, just kind of like for me, just kind of hone in a little bit on this whole concept around trusting ourselves. Lynette, you too are an incredibly accomplished coach. You're an energy worker, and in my opinion, an all-around good egg. And so I just would love to know, like, what led you down this path of trust and intuition and trusting that burning fire within you. Like, is there a story that you'd like to share that helps us kind of resonate with you about this?
I guess I can't think of just like it's just defined to one story, but I think it's just been my life path. I spent so much of my early life and into my 20s and 30s just giving my power out to everyone outside of myself. Just getting all validation externally. And I never learned to trust my own instincts. And I constantly looked outside of myself for everything. And it wasn't until I kept having just different things show up in my life that I realized it's time to start trusting myself. And kind of going along with what Dominic said earlier, when I started doing it, I had to do it like little bits at a time, like baby steps. I had to say, today I'm going to trust myself to make my bed. And then when I felt like, oh, I don't feel like making my bed, I'd be like, but I made this promise to myself. And if I make a promise to myself, I do it. And it just took me like, thing after thing of just building this trust. And then the more I trust it, the more I just have learned that when I live by that, my life goes in smoothly and I'm in flow with the universe and everything kind of comes in the way that it's meant to be. But when I'm outside of myself looking externally for all the answers, then I'm just hitting upon resistance and my life is just not in this place of flow. When you were talking earlier about just accepting the path, it kind of makes me think of when we go out hiking, because when we go out hiking, we start talking, we don't pay attention to where we're going, but yet we're both experienced enough at hiking that we trust ourselves. We trust, even if it means, and this has happened, that I have to sit in a parking lot and wait for you to come back a few hours later and get me. I trust that you're going to find your way out of the woods and come back to me,
Right.
So I trusted myself enough to say, okay, in this situation, everything is going to work out. And I think it's what you said, the more we do that, the more we honor it and the more we listen to it, then the more it just becomes completely natural for us.
Do you still feel that way after trusting me to jump on bikes and ride through like someplace we really didn't know where we were in San Antonio for 20 miles?
We did get pretty lost on bikes in San Antonio, but I still trusted us. I still trusted myself and you that we were going to have an adventure and then we were going to find our way out of it. And not only did we, but now we have this, hilarious story and a great adventure to go along with it.
Right. And I think, Dominic, it kind of goes along with what you were saying, right? Like you weren't predetermined about how this hike was going to go. You just had enough trust in yourself, right? That you were going to be able to do the hike and you were going to be able to accomplish it and you were going to come out of those woods or off that mountain safely. And Lynette, I love that you brought up like, some days you just said, look, I'm just going to trust myself that I'm going to make my bed today. Right. And it's like, I'm going to trust myself that I'm not going to hit the snooze button 5 times. I'm going to actually get out of bed on time and make that train. And so I love that it's just like these small practical steps, because I think sometimes I think that there has to be this how-to manual, right? Or can't the book just tell me the 5 steps I need to take to build my character or to trust myself or whatever? And it's like, no, sometimes it's just all those little tiny, tiny micro steps that I think really add up to like becoming something that is big and important. Well, I have to tell you too, I just love talking about these topics and understanding the stories behind the stories, because I think too often we talk about issues such as trust on a very superficial level or from a textbook or even a business perspective. But what makes this conversation so fascinating is that it is really more about your journey and what has driven you to explore your journey from the inside out. So speaking of inside out, what are some of the things you practice to gain trust with yourself? And Dominic, I'll start with you, because then Lynette, I'd like to ask you to lead us in a little exercise here to kind of end this. So Dominic, what are some of the things that you've done to gain trust with yourself?
You mentioned it before, or maybe it's Lynette. It's about being, say, more heart-based than say head-based. I've heard people say enough times to me, like, Dominic, you have a really analytical mind, that I'm going to say, okay, at some level, I must have an analytical mind. And I'm extremely good at figuring things out. It's almost like I feel like I need very few bits of information to kind of make a good projection of what's going to happen. And so, that's one way. Like, I've built trust having those experiences. But I'd say what has really helped me go down this path is, I realized at some point, I'm not sure if it's conscious or not, but it's just kind of like, oh, like I do get to be my own best friend in this. And so,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, people might say it's a higher power. They could say it's God. Um, or they could say it's me. But I think that higher power we're looking for is awareness that someone has us, that better vision of ourselves. God has us, but knowing that, there is support. So that was a really big realization for me. And it's like, okay, well, no matter how badly I mess up, I'm still supported. Um,
Mhm.
and so that's a piece. And the other thing is, speak of the analytical mind, it's more saying, okay, let me just be open to what comes. Because if I'm always kind of predicting what's happening, it's almost like I'm not trusting, and I'm trying to angle for certain things or design for things or be like strategic like all the time. And I have found just such a huge relaxation being in the space of saying, like, I have no idea what's going to come next, but I know how I'd like to feel. And so it's like really focusing on those feelings, and so instead of like, I think, it's more like I feel, I want to feel. And what can I do to, like, sustain those feelings and be in that space. And it comes down to, like, being in that space a lot of times is just being very open and very receptive to what appears.
I can resonate with that completely because I will tell you when I was younger, I was always like focused on the future, right? What's my next job? What's my next house going to look like? How about my next vacation? What about my next car? What about? It was always like, and I always felt this desire to, like, whether it was like go see a psych or go see somebody that does angel readings or whatever it might be. It was like I always just like had this absolute desire to know like how the future was going to unfold. And then just a few years ago, I was like, maybe it was just last year, actually. I don't know if it was a few years ago, but all of a sudden I was just like, and Lynette, you and I talked about this, right? While walking, but one day I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to know how the future is going to unfold because it is, to your point, it is going to unfold the way it's going to unfold. How do I want to feel as it's unfolding, right? I want to feel happy. I read this thing one time. It said, stop thinking about like who you want to be with, right? Whether it's a spouse, a partner, whatever, or what house you want to live in, or what, car you want to have. Stop thinking about that. Instead, start thinking about, now, what feeling do you want to have when you're with that person? Do you want to feel safe? Do you want to feel secure? Do you want to feel, happy, adventurous? What are the feelings that you want to have? And seek the feelings, not the person or the thing. And then what ends up showing up in your life is all of a sudden you're like, wow, that was like so incredible. I didn't know that the birds were even singing, right? Because you're not looking for the experience. You're looking for the feeling of like, the birds remind me of spring. It's okay that it's snowing outside. Those birds give me the feeling of spring. And so you start to see something positive in your surroundings versus concentrating, so much on what I will call materialistic things. So it was just a fun exploration this last year, and I'm forever grateful for my girlfriends for like all the conversations that we have, whether it's while they're on the way to work or we're hiking or whatever. Like it's just that's been really quite fun. So, Lynette, speaking of all of this, I would love for you to. I think one of the things we're trying to do is like talk about the ways that you practice to gain trust with yourself, and maybe if you feel up to it, maybe we could do like a little bit of a meditation or something to help the audience just center in and feel the yes or no in their bodies versus like what their brain might, in the little chatter that's going on in their brain right now.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent way to end out today. People always say, "Oh, feel it in your gut instinct," but for so many people, they can't even feel their gut instinct anymore. They've pulled so far off the core of themselves, and they're living so much in the external world. They don't even know how to make that first step of how do I trust myself? How do I feel it? So learning to like really use your body as this indicator of what a yes is and what a no is it's such a powerful way to start this. So why don't we all just take a couple of deep breaths? Just taking some deep breaths in, just feeling our belly expand on the inhale, and then pulling the belly button back to the spine on the exhale. Just letting all stress, all worry, everything just fall away in the moment. Just allowing yourself to come into this place of calmness, making sure you take that breath deep into the belly. Now I want you to just envision a time in your life when you knew something was an absolute yes. Like there was no question. You're like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted. This is what I'm going to do. And now I want you to really, really focus in on your body. Find where in your body you can feel that yes. It might be a tingling, it might be a warmth, you might feel your body slightly move in one direction or the other. Really focus in and know that feeling so intimately you can pull back into it anytime you need to. Now I want you to do the opposite and find a time that you just knew something was an absolute no. You knew it was not something you should pursue, not something anything you wanted to do, and just feel in your body where you feel that no. And again, just really focusing in, what does it feel like? Is it warm? Is it tingly? Is it vibrating? What exactly is that feeling, and where is that located in your body? And this is a great way whenever you want to decide, is something a yes for me or is it a no for me? And really learn to hone into this feeling. So if you guys just want to slowly kind of bring your awareness back into our talk, but at the same time, hold on to that. As you come back into the talk, hold on as much as you can to what that yes and that no felt like. And then next time you need to make a decision, just start small. Like I said, making a promise to myself, today I'm going to make my bed, and I learn to trust myself. Do the same thing by testing out this yes and no so that you can get familiar with what does a yes feel like and what does a no feel like. And the more we do it outside of a big event, it actually helps us learn that and cement it into our memory, into our muscle memory. If we only do it in a big event and there's so much else going on, we're probably not going to really be able to do it. But if we fine tune it by all day long, just testing little things and saying yes or no, and just getting to know your body that way, then when something big happens, you'll be able to already hone into what that feels like. So just curious, were you both able to feel the difference in the yes and the no's?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I will tell you, whenever I think about a yes, for me, it's a very calming, like my body it just relaxes and I feel really calm. And when I think about the no, like something that I knew was a no, I feel constricted right through here. Like my shoulders and like my throat and my chest gets really constricted, like in a tight feeling. So it's really interesting. I remember one time I had like kind of like an experience where it's like I just knew something was wrong, but it was like it was playing around in my mind. And I remember I went to the front door to open up the front door, and it was literally like I was punched in the stomach. Literally, it felt like a punch in the stomach. And I was like, I am so right about this. But you know what I did? I let my mind talk myself out of how incredibly right I was about that. And so that's what I think this last year's journey has been for me. It's like, trust the punch in your gut, right? Because it's right.
Or you have to get punched in the gut.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hello, it might be right. And
there might have been signals before you had to get to the level of being punched in the gut. But you let the mind override those, right?
Yes, absolutely. Because, like we were talking before, like, I don't want to be that kind of person. I don't want to be untrusting. I don't want to. And it's like, yes, but my gut is like screaming something's wrong. And so, yeah, it was fascinating today. I did not feel like I got punched in the gut. I did instead felt like it just felt constricted across here. So, and I'm sorry, Dominic, please do share as well.
Well, my yes, it's very mild. It just feels like I'd say a lack of resistance, or maybe even like what a head feels like nodding, even if I'm not doing it. And my nose, it just feels like a push away from something. Like it's like I'm being pushed away from a scene or a scenario or like an involvement. and I've been doing my own work to try to get more and more familiar with it. And it's been fun actually being able to tell like the differences because, as someone may be talking, I can be like, oh, wow, I'm experiencing the no.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you both for sharing your time with me today. And I absolutely look forward to diving deeper into the stories behind the stories with each of you each month. And so for more information and to learn more about us, please go to www.anandalife.org. Lynette, in addition to podcast, what else should we know about you?
Well, I do a lot of individual health coaching and group coaching. And my passion is just to be there to support people along their journey. And inside of coaching, I do a lot of spiritual coaching as well as energy work. And I've had so many beautiful people along my path that have just been there to help guide me and direct me and help me step into the version of who I am now. And I absolutely enjoy being that for other people. As well as coaching, I also do some facilitation and I teach workshops.
Excellent. And Dominic, you?
Well, at this moment in time, I do relationship and communication coaching. So I work with individuals, I work with couples, I work with people that just want to improve their relating with other people. And so in my work, a lot of times, that's romantic relationships. And many times it's work relationships as well. People want to not feel so beleaguered at work or something. And I also get into a lot of relationships, say, between spouses. I mean, more parents as well as siblings. It's like those are the core relationships. So it's really enjoyable because I kind of work through someone's network from working with them and chewing up all of those relationships. So they're at this space where they have a lot of peace inside, but also a lot of joyful and fun relating to.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, again, if you'd like to learn more about us, please visit www.anandalife.org. Thank you and have a great day.